In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial on how to cut this stylish asymmetric hemline or side basque top with a stylish neckline. So to start drafting, here is my pattern paper and I've gone ahead to mark out the basic measurements for this dress. First, you need to get your blouse length or add 5 inches after your waistline. So we are still going to have an extension after that, and I marked my shoulder to bust, under bust, waistline, which I added 5 inches extra. Now we are still going to have an extension at the hemline area when we are marking this dress. I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 on this point plus half, because this dress has a sleeve, and I'll come down by 1 inch. And also this dress has like a shoulder pad also. So after that, I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches and I'll connect. Now the necklines are not the same. I'll go ahead to readjust later. Find your chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I made a mark there and I placed my ruler to draw out a straight line. Now I'm going to place my tape and I'll mark my shoulder divided by 2. After that, I'll place my ruler and I'm going to connect to draw out a straight line. Now after marking that, I'll place my tape and I'll divide my armhole into 2. Come out by ½ inch here, and I'll go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 at this point. Now after I'm done marking, I'm going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to connect from here to the midpoint where I have ½ inch, and then to the upper part of my pattern this way. Now after I'm done marking that, the next step is to go ahead to start marking my dart. I'll start by marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. Now after marking that, I'll place my ruler and I'll draw out a straight line all the way down. Now after I'm done marking this, I'll go ahead to mark my dart intake. Mark ½ inch here and 1.5. Also repeat it here, ½ inch, 1.5. So if you're plus size, you will use 1 inch here and then 2 inches on the other side, or if you're a bit busty, because this is a princess dart pattern. Now I'll go ahead and connect, drawing out a straight line. After that, I'm going to come down a little and connect to my underbust. At this side, I'm going to place my curved drew and I'm going to connect from there all the way to the upper part of my pattern. After that, I'm going to use my marker and I'm going to outline my pattern. So I'll go ahead to remark my neckline to 3 by 3 inches, which I'll still go ahead to readjust much later. Now I'll go ahead to connect. After I'm done connecting that, at the armhole of this dress, at the midpoint of my armhole, I'll go ahead to connect that point that we came out by ½ inch. Connect it down to your bust point. So I'll go ahead and mark ½ inch on both sides for my dart intake, and I'll reconnect. Also reconnect at this point, right? Now after I'm done reconnecting, this is what I have here. Now the ½ inch dart intake on both sides, I'm going to go ahead to extend it all the way to the side of my pattern this way, and I will reconnect it. This is so that when you're joining your pattern, the center will not be slightly longer than that of the side of your pattern. But if you have any excess, go ahead to just trim it out. Now I'll insert my measurements. Now I'll go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Pick this dart intake here and I'll replace, then add my sewing allowance. Use any sewing allowance of your choice. Here I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4. Measure the dart intake here and then I'll add my sewing allowance. Measure your waist round circumference divided by 4. Measure the dart intake you have here, replace it, and then add your sewing allowance. Here I'm going to go ahead to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to measure the dart intake I have here, replace it, and then add my sewing allowance. Now after I'm done marking that, I'll go ahead to place my ruler to connect. So next, I'll just go ahead and place my ruler. So I realized I didn't connect it to the waistline. I'll reconnect and then go ahead to connect the rest of my pattern. Now, after connecting, I'll mark my bust dart. To get your bust dart is the difference between your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. My shoulder to waist in front is 17, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5. If you take out 15.5 from 17, you will have 1.5. This is what I marked and extended to the bust area. Now, I'll replace all these measurements at this side of my pattern before we go ahead to alter this dress. Now, after marking this out, on the neckline from this side, I'll come out by 1 inch. You can use ½ inch or 1 inch to come out. Now, I'll draw it in a way that is slanted down to around 3 inches. So from there, I'll make like a little curve, then measure like 2 inches to 3 inches depending on what you want, and I'll draw this out. So from here, I'll go up like a curve again. Now this time I'll go up, place my tape and measure around 2.5 inches from my neckline, and I will mark, connect it to that point. Then I'll use that 2.5 inches and now reconnect my neckline, because if you notice, the neckline at this part is a bit high. So this is the new neckline of this dress, right? So I'll just go ahead and outline. So my marker stopped working, so I'll just go ahead and use my pencil to thicken those lines to show you the new neckline. Now coming over to this side, you notice on this side, from the side is a bit high. You can use 2.5 to 3 inches, right? 2.5 to 3 inches, and you notice I added an extension at the lower part. Now from here, come in by your sewing allowance first. Now after coming in, you can now go ahead to start creating the slant. Now for the extension, you can use about 7 to 9 inches. So for me, I used 8.5. This totally depends on what you want to achieve. Now after slanting it in this way, I will go ahead and I will extend my dart legs, because we are going to be cutting out this area. Whatever we have will be getting to that point. Now I'll connect, blend in my darts, and I'll start taking this up. Now from this side, I will now come down by 3.5 inches. Now if you notice, one side of the side is higher than one side, so this side I'm marking out now is higher than the initial side, and I'll connect. Now if you're not okay with this asymmetric hemline here, you can always go ahead to readjust it to suit whatever you want, right? Now after this, I'll just go ahead to cut out this pattern. So while cutting out this pattern, ensure that you blend out the dart areas before going ahead to cut out. And I'll also repeat it at this other side of my pattern and cut out the rest of my pattern. So if you have any question, you can go ahead to also ask. So after cutting this, we'll now go ahead to draft out the back pattern of this dress. Now at the neckline, I'll also cut this out, and make sure that you don't cut out the necessary darts. Now after I'm done cutting out, this is what I have. This is what the pattern is looking like. So you can always go ahead to readjust the hemline if it doesn't suit what you want. You can just, there's room for readjusting before transferring to your pattern, right? Now let's go over to the back. So I've gone ahead to mark out all the basic measurements for the back, which includes my shoulder to bust, waist, and I added 5 inches extra. Now you know the waistline is not as long as that of the asymmetric hemline. I'll start by marking my dart. I'll start with my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which I marked already. I marked on the bust, waist, and blouse length, and I'll go ahead to draw out a straight line at that point. Now you want to mark your dart intake of ½ inch on both sides, and you will come down by 1 inch. From here, I'll measure like 4 inches, and I will now connect my darts. I'll go ahead to connect this, connect the other side, then go ahead to extend to the lower part of my pattern. Now after I'm done marking this, I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Add any sewing allowance of your choice. Mark your waist circumference divided by 4. Measure the dart intake, replace, and add my sewing allowance. Now here, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4. Add my sewing allowance. Now remember that all your marks or your measurements should start after the zipper line. Now the zipper is not included in your measurement. I placed my French curve or my ruler to connect. And I also came in by 1/2 inch on the zipper to take care of the zipper bulge. I'll extend this up and then go ahead to take it all the way to the lower part. Now after this, I'll extend this line to the zipper. Now we are almost done with drafting one side. Now you notice on the side that has a basic neckline of 3 inches, we came down by 3.5 from the waistline. So I did that and I connected to the hemline of the dress. Now I'll just go ahead to cut this out. Then I'll start cutting out this other side. So after cutting out one side of this back, you will now go ahead to cut the other side. Now the other side of the back should have a neckline of 4 inches by 1, while this side that I'm cutting now has a basic neckline of 3 inches by 3 inches. Now to readjust it to suit the other side, because after cutting one side you cut the other, readjust the neckline to 4 inches and come up by 3 to 2.5 depending on what you came up by on the other side. Now I will now cut out the neckline and the sides of this pattern.